Hebu tuelekee katika eneo la tukio ambako naarifiwa kwamba mwakilishi wa kina mama kaunti ya Nairobi Esther Passaris amefika katika eneo hilo, na kama tunavyomwona hapo kando, tusikie pengine ni yapi ambayo atakuwa anataka kuzungumza kwa wakati huu.
Is this a septic pit or what are we stepping on?
Let us all be on one side, yes?
Yeah, be on one side.
Sure. Madam, come on, ma'am. So that you get space.
Hey,
so if you are blocked from here, you will not succeed. So the best thing is you come from the front. No. Let us get organized so that we can have something for you. We are not Wait a bit. What we are suggesting, kindly let us organize ourselves so that we get enough space for everything.
Excuse. Story like this, you know, and it's a story that we don't want to hear. It's a tragedy, all right? The 7 children that have succumbed to their injuries, we say sorry to their parents, and not just the private owner of this school who's trying to provide education where there is none. I've always said that Dagoretti South, Nando Ward has no school. And I remember during our campaigns, we used to say that we need to build a school here. There is no public school in this ward. And we need schools in every ward. So private sector comes in and builds schools. And the schools that they build, it's with limited resources. They provide the facilities. It becomes an examination center. Some of the children from this school even end up in universities. So, but the problem is we build schools without any standards. And I've seen this even in the orphanages that I visit in Nairobi. Most of them are Babati structures. You've got over 500 children in those orphanages, and again, it's congested and it's not safe.
Imetubidi tukatize kidogo yanayojiri hapo, manake kama unavyoona hali si hali. Mwakilishi wa kina mama Esther Passaris anakuwa pia hana nafasi ya kuweza kuzungumza vizuri, lakini pindi hali itakapokuwa sawa tutaweza kurejea huko tuweze kusikiza kauli yake kuhusiana na hali ilivyo kwa sasa na kwa jumla mkasa huu ambao umetokea katika shule hiyo asubuhi ya leo. Kwa sasa tunasubiri tu kupata taarifa kamili kutoka kwa Wizara ya Elimu na pia kutoka katika hospitali ya Kenyatta ili tupate maelezo zaidi kuhusiana na wale watoto ambao wamepelekwa katika shule hiyo, katika hospitali hiyo. Na pia mwanahabari wetu Raquel Mwigai kwa upande mwingine atakuwa anatafuta kujua hatma ya wale wanafunzi wengine ambao walikuwa katika shule hiyo wakati mkasa huo ulipotokea.
For every primary school in Nairobi, we do not have secondary schools. We know we have a shortage of schools. We have a shortage of classrooms. Community-based schools. All the community-based schools in Nairobi and in the informal settlements are similar to the one that has collapsed here today. What we have to discourage is 2-story or 3-story. We have to discourage, and I think that's the first step that we should take, because none of the structures can hold, none of the Mabati structures can hold 2 or 3 stories. We've even got orphanages that go into 3 stories with Mabati. So I think it's time that the chiefs start making some leeway, but don't use that as a way to exploit, because again we can end up having a lot of corruption going on there. Let's look at this as a matter of life and death. You know, we've lost students, we've got students that are injured, they came to school to study. Their parents put them here because there was no other choice. If you're living in this neighborhood and there's no other school, so I think even if we have to put a school in a hammer, you know, we put a tent school, why don't we just provide a school for this community here, a public school under the tent until we can build one? When we opened the dormitory at Moi Girls, we saw that it was a new technology where you can put up a school in less than 6 months. It's prefabricated and it's brought out, and I think that's the way we should move. So for me, it's sad. And then of course, Nairobi, we have a problem with land, and most of the land in this city was acquired fraudulently by ex-councillors and leaders of the county assembly. You know, you've got people that are able to show you so many titles. They never purchased this land. We have to go and look at the land report and look at how we can recover public land. Because there's no way you could have a ward like this and there's no land for schools. So I think all those councillors who are sitting on massive parcels of land and speculating and selling, I think the government has to now come into play and say, you know what, you didn't acquire this land. We're held ransom by people who acquired land illegally. So I feel that for this school, I think the most important thing is how do you get normalcy? How do you get the students that are here? I don't know how many students were being housed here, but we will find out. You know, 800 students. Where do you take those 800 students? I mean, my task now would be to see how can I facilitate them with a tent, you know, a tent and some chairs so that they can continue with the learning. You clear up the place, you continue with the learning. And I think we will sit down with CS Magoha. The idea is not to now shut down the school, and say they did something wrong. At the end of the day, it is government's failure to provide adequate learning facilities for all the students in this country. And I'll tell you what, this started during Kibaki's time. I remember the German government coming and saying, if you provide us title deeds for all the schools that the county government owns, we will build the schools for you in line with the free primary education that the government is providing. We were not able to provide any titles. Nobody wants to provide titles for learning facilities. Why? Because they've grabbed half of this land. So if the CS would actually get title deeds for all the land that he has, there are certain schools, like right now, maybe these 800 with the bus services and facilities, you could find a way to incorporate them into a public school so learning continues. You know, because that's the best way to deal with trauma, to make continuity happen. So I think it's important that we work with this school, with this facility. The tragedy has happened, and it's happened because there's a collapse in the systems everywhere. So it's not just the owners of the school that are responsible. It is all of us as government, from the chief all the way down to the administration, all the way down to the county government. We're all responsible. So let us learn from this mistake and let us see how we can actually ensure that we have enough learning facilities. There are certain schools that have got a lot of land. You know, like Lenana's got a lot of land. You've got Moi, Nairobi Girls has got a lot of land. How can we increase the number of streams in those schools? Instead of having 2,000 schools, you have 5,000, and then you provide bus services to take the students from the various wards to those schools. We have to make a holistic solution to this problem. And today, I think what we have to hold is that 7 young girls or students lost their lives. 800 students are displaced right now in their learning. And a few students are in hospital trying to recuperate from their injuries. What we have to do is let's not look at it just as the problem of the government. It is our problems as citizens. Because after all, we are the ones giving birth to those children without a plan on where they're going to be educated and studying. I think it's important that we start now as Kenyans owning our problems collectively and solving our problems collectively. I think the media, we can spin this with faults, but we can also spin it with solutions. Let us try and find a way to spin this with both the problem and the solution, because the solutions are with all of us. Yeah. And I think right now the focus would be to respect the fact that we have parents that have lost their children, and there's a lot of pain and suffering, and they will need some support. And I believe that we'll sit down with the CS and see what are the best ways that we can make this school get back into learning. And then see how these students, because these students need a place to go. I will look into the history of this school and see how have they been performing, how long have they been here, do they own the rent. You will find that most of these schools that are in wards like this are renting the land. They don't own the land. And they're renting the land from a previous MCA or a councillor who was in the county government, who has no money to develop, but he has the allotment letters because he got it illegally. So government can look into some of these parcels and see, compensate the person, let's put up a school, because already kids are aware that there's a school here and it's a learning. You've got housing, residential all over. You have to have schools nearby. We don't want our children waking up at 5 in the morning and 4 in the morning to go to a school that they're sitting in traffic for 3-4 hours. I mean, it's not healthy for the students to sit in the buses that long. And it's not healthy for the students to sleep less than 5-6 hours. So I think we have to look at ensuring that in every ward in this county, right, we have a primary school and a secondary school. And we have to go step by step. But right now, we're so far behind. It's like our infrastructure. We were so far behind, we ran with it. With our SGR, we were so far behind, we ran with it. Let us run with education. Let us run with universal health care. Let us run with food security. Let us run with manufacturing so that we can have a holistic solution. After all, whatever happens that is negative in our country affects and impacts all of us. That's why you're all here today under the sun. Yeah, it's not just news. It's something that has affected our communities, our sisters and our brothers.